everybody. Welcome to Mirror in the Stall. I am happy to introduce you to someone that I have just been connected with recently. And I felt inspired to invite her on, and I don't know why yet, but I'm sure that there's a reason. So this is Heather. Welcome, Heather.
Hi, everybody.
So go ahead and let everybody know what you do and who you are.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you, Amber. I love inspired action. Like I run a podcast, I do a podcast on intuition. And so following inspired moments and creating action out of them are what I try to inspire the world to do with my podcast. So I was like, yes, of course I'll be on your podcast, Amber. This is awesome. So it's very cool. I find being able to connect with different people because you have a podcast is also fun, because it's like COVID isn't even happening because you're making friends around the world, kind of doing this as a format. So thank you again. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about me, I guess. Where to begin? I've talked to animals since I was a little kid. I acted like a dog to get a dog when I was 5. Like I'm that out of the box kind of person. I'm somebody who is a student of life, but I've also had very, I was on a path at one point to take a whole bunch of courses because I needed to prove to myself that I knew what I was doing before I actually worked with clients. Yeah. So like I was on the run of, I'll take that course. So I have a lot of educational background in the holistic end of things. I worked in the corporate world after university doing the Drummond thing, which is, you get a stable job, go work in a stable job, get a pension, go do all that normal expected kind of thing. And because of the disruptor in me, I heard the words "I'm done" with like corporate America around 36, and I call that the date that I retired. So I realized at 36 that, you know what, Eat, Pray, Love works for a year, and then you have to start paying the bills. And so in that year for me, because that's how I got myself figured out that, I can quit my job and just take a year. For me, that's kind of an acceptable thing to do. I registered for a nutrition course, and that flipped my whole world upside down because I was a macaroni and cheese kind of girl. And I was like, I actually can learn how to cook soup and do things that, are good for me. That's kind of interesting. So in that year, a lot of the education started. So energy medicine, different modalities. And I was sitting in hindsight between 2 very narcissistic people who became my best friends. So I learned after dealing with them over the course of 5 or 6 years, we've got lots of lessons that come from narcissistic people. They give you your own 2 feet and you give you a spine if you walk away. So there's lots of lessons that I learned from that. So I bless them for that. I'm really grateful that they came into my life because they're 1 in 25. And so when you're working with people, you're going to come across that. And then acupuncture, Bach Flower Remedies, and all these different things came across my Theta healing. We've got that in common. All these different modalities came across my radar, and I said, well, I'll just put them all in a soup and have a toolbox and work with people using a biomeridian machine, and created my own process because I didn't want to compete with anybody. And I've been at that for 15, 16 years doing health assessments with people because everything's energy. I don't have to work locally. I work with people around the world doing that. And it's been neat because it's been such a personalized process that each person kind of gets what they need out of the toolbox. And half the time I'm just saying stuff that comes out and get out of the way. And
my clients happens. I'm like, I don't even know what I just said. I hope something that I said helps you.
Yes, yeah. I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but I'm telling you all this. For some reason, I must have needed to tell the narcissistic friend thing here. I don't know why, because that doesn't always come up.
Probably for me.
Could be, could be. Yeah, because that's not usually part of my intro. So there it is. I've always, from when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to work with animals more than I wanted to work with people. And then my job in the corporate world was in a call center, so I was working with a lot of people and always navigating into the counselor type role. And I was the manager who would feed everybody vitamin C to keep them keep them at work. Like, don't get sick on me. I can't afford you to be sick. So when I became a naturopath, I was like, oh, I've kind of been doing this already. I just didn't have really the education behind it. So it's been interesting to kind of have hindsight at 51 and go, oh, all of this is divinely led and totally meant to be where I'm at doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I got into horses at the age of 50. So like 18, almost not quite 18 months ago, I just was like, I need to learn about horses. And a friend in France said, oh, you need to meet Larry. And I'm like, Larry, great, let me know. And she's like, no, I've known his wife since I was 2. And sure enough, I got introduced to Larry. I showed up and he put me on a horse. I'm like, I've never ridden before and you're putting me on a horse. He's like, oh yeah, it's Woody. It's okay. You'll get on a horse. And I'm like, okay.
Woody sounds like the name of a horse that you should be safe on. That sounds like a good, hardy, like safe, solid name.
Yeah, he was like 20. He's 23 or 24 now. So yeah, he was fine to get on. And yeah, I've been volunteering at his barn where there's anywhere between 9 and 12 horses every day ever since. So I'm very fortunate. I said, I want to learn anything you want to teach me. And he's like, I'll teach you everything I know if you'll be my backup. So it's been a neat 18 months to be able to have his barn be a test kitchen for all my stuff. The short version of me.
Yeah, I feel like I've talked to actually a couple people just this week, and it seems like there's this theme of when I was little, this was just something that was so natural that came to me. And either I want to get back to it, or I thought it was just my imaginary friends. And I thought I was just, and I was like, well, there's a part of us that I think everyone has that, but over the years and the layers get put on and that part gets shut down. The adults that are trying to make sure that you don't get like ostracized as the weird child tell you that that's not actually a thing. That's just your imagination. Maybe don't tell people.
Don't tell people you talk to crows.
That it gets diluted and you get older and you start to go, no, I kind of, whatever path you end up taking, it's, I kind of feel like maybe there is something more to this. And then you run into different people that help you unpeel that stuff. So for you, what are you doing with them specifically right now as far as the horses?
For horses? So a lot of it comes from behavior or a physical health issue that has been created most often since an event. So be it when they were broken at 6 months, or be it a trailer incident where they had a seizure, or some situation where it maybe didn't seem like that was the turning point, but in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, they haven't been the same since X. So a lot of times it can be on the behavior scale, or it can be on the physical health, like their hooves just aren't healing. Like 2 farriers have been here and we haven't been able to get anything working as far as their hooves are concerned, or we've got an ulcer that's never quite right, or like she's just been cinchy forever and I didn't know it was a possibility that she wasn't cinchy. And so it sometimes starts off as a very physical or behavioral thing, and then it becomes about optimizing that horse, and usually optimizing the person by making them aware of, what is that horse really trying to tell you? because the personality of the horse will come out throughout the process of working with the horse. And they're like, you haven't even met this horse. I'm like, well, they're in the room. They're here. So you can't, it doesn't matter whether I'm seeing them or not. The personality of the horse will come through. And sometimes they're very vocal. So I guess examples of situations that I've worked with, in what I call the test kitchen or his barn, we've had a horse who had a seizure in a trailer when he was 3. He was, brought up basically by this horseman who's a very gentle, work with the horse never learns how to buck kind of horse trainer. And since then he was afraid of the wind, he was afraid of his shadow, he was skittish at any show, he couldn't focus, he was that horse that had potential, and then he left, basically the horse left. So he's 12 now, so he had a long time of not being right, and he went to a horse show this summer and he's like, my horse is back. And what we figured out was the stress of that seizure had created a situation where his physical body stayed in that stress, and he accumulated inflammation, for lack of a better word. And then that inflammation then filled up a variety of different buckets. Like his head literally exploded when he had a seizure. And so his head became a weak spot for inflammation. His hooves were always bad. He has navicular issues, so that became an issue. And he got ulcers. So he had all these different scenarios happening. And by boosting his immune system through supplementation that was personalized to him, and then getting rid of that inflammation from a very physical perspective, we got his horse back. We used Bach Flower Remedies to help with some of the emotional trauma stuff, and it took about 6 months, and that's about average for humans and animals to get things cleaned up. So that would be a situation where it's just creating a personalized plan based on that horse's biochemistry to figure out what they need, and then you just follow the plan, and the body does its natural healing when you give it what it needs. So we had another one who wasn't releasing an egg, so she was also a very hard breaking situation, and also had ulcers. But she was the stoic horse that, yeah, I could leave her in the barn for 3 hours away from the herd, and she, nope. Doing Masterson on her, it took probably 4 months before I got a yawn or a twitch out of her. And now she's yawning and licking and twitching, and we got her corrected as far as the immune system thing was concerned. So there's just a variety of different things. Sometimes it's totally a situation where they are just in a hangover because their body's not working properly, and giving them the change in, maybe they just need more fat in their diet, so they need flax added to their, they need optimization. So there is just differences in every single being that can be optimized. Does that make sense or answer some of your questions? So,
absolutely. Yeah. I feel like what started happening recently for me was in the last, I guess, 4 years, is that deeper understanding of how it's just such a generalized thing that you hear in your entire life when you're around horses, is that your energy affects them. And then it, but it's kind of like, it never really goes beyond that, except that's just something that people throw around. And people sometimes translate it into, I have to act confident. They can't know I'm scared. There's all these little, whatever general thing people think that like actually works, and realizing at like a deeper level how much our own experiences are affecting our health and our unawareness of what it feels like to be in our body. And then I feel like it's the same for them, right? In that aspect that we're so similar, that when we have those situations that happen, that we either remember at a conscious level or unconsciously, that it gets stuck in our body. And it's been such a big thing for me in the last, I'd say even the last, this year, like the last 2 months.
Yes. Yeah.
Working with a cranial sacral person, I've had the most
Fantastic.
profound realizations just from starting to really tap into what does it feel like to be in your body. And so can you describe from your perspective about what happens somatically in the horse's body when they have an experience like, they get stuck in the trailer, and what does that look like on the system? I know what I tell people, but I always am like, I'm like kindergarten level. Like, I'm not a neuroscientist. I have a basic idea of what happens. And so
Yeah.
my interpretation is what I share. But I like to hear other people's, how physically, how do you release it? Like what happens to the body and then the nervous system when something like they pull back, or they're started, in a way where there's a lot of fear put in, that trauma response was, ignited, and how that affects them when it's done, when they look calm, like how is that still affecting them?
Right. So my brain works like a Pixar movie. So I'm not sure I'm going to be too far off your kindergarten, your kindergarten explanation.
That's fine.
So from, I guess one of my points of reference that I always come back to is we have the ability, if the immune system is strong enough, to recover from stress. And at some point, whether the stress is repeated or whether or not it's a big enough stress, our immune system won't be able to recover. And so whether or not it is, I see it at a very cellular level, and it's officially called chronic reverse polarity because we're made of water. So not, it affects every single system because every system has water in it. So from a somatic experience or from that type of angle, I'm gonna take that angle and I'm gonna bring it down to a cellular level, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
So whenever a stress happens, just like a magnet, when it's stressed, it reverses its polarity. You're not able to put a magnet back on the fridge the same way if you throw it on the ground hard enough. It's going to flip because that pole now is saying, no, I'm positive. I was negative before, but I'm positive and I want to be attracted to that fridge. The same thing goes on with any stress in our bodies, is the water will change its polarity and it will actually reverse how it flows. And so we become, every being made of water becomes like a half flushed toilet. So you transplant a plant, or you have an experience in a trailer and have a seizure as a horse, or somebody's breaking you and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? What? I don't understand what you want. And you're in that breaking mode. So you've got, 4 days that you're going to be 0 to 60 and have a rider on your back. There's not enough recovery time in there, the way some people do it. Or you're a little kid and you get your appendix out at 5 and you're all alone in a hospital, whatever the situation is, right? Mm-hmm. So that polarity gets shifted and it creates assembly lines going, quote unquote, the wrong way. When that happens, nutrients don't get made properly, we don't detoxify properly, we end up in a hangover. That hangover typically lasts 3 to 5 days. But if it's repetitive or that lowered immune system doesn't get boosted in some way, then we get into clogged subway lines. And that's where the somatic issues occur and things get blocked and stuck on a very physical level. But all that can also be happening on an emotional level and an energetic level. We get chakras that get blocked up. We get energy systems that don't flow the right way. So when things get trapped, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, whatever way that is, when things get trapped, if you don't correct that flow, then the event gets time stamped. And it's like, nope, I'm still back there. Even though it's 10 years later, my body's still stuck in that state, either energetically, mentally, emotionally, doesn't matter, because that imprint was so strong. So it's to move that energy, it's to get past that emotion, however you wish to do it. So there's a variety of different ways to get past an emotion, or to process an emotion. And physically, how do you are you removed from the stress? Did you get a divorce and you lost the 200 pounds? You know, like sometimes that'll be enough to do it. Did you, all of a sudden change your diet? Like, oh, I got inspired to get off wheat and dairy. I felt fabulous. Okay, great. Well, was that enough to boost your immune system and get you out of that stress state? So there's so many ways that people intuitively will do it, but sometimes people and animals need help because the hangover is too big, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Does that give you kind of a understanding of where I sit on that whole somatic thing? Because it does get stuck. It's like those old Velcro balls that used to throw at the Velcro mitts, and it's like it gets stuck. Or if you've ever walked anywhere with a long-haired dog, and you're gonna have all sorts of things stuck in their hair. We go through life, we're gonna end up with stuff stuck in our hair, Right. And it's how you boost yourself, how much self-care you do, to how self-aware you become. If you're not grounded in your body, you're not going to notice all those burrs stuck in your hair, kind of thing.
Right.
And as you get more grounded, or you go through things like modalities like the craniosacral or osteopathy, or you get involved in even a meditation practice or doing qigong or any sort of modality that brings you back to your body, you're going to start processing stuff, whether you want to or not, whether it's in your dreams or whether it's like, why am I reacting so badly to this tiny event? Like, what's been triggered here? You will start processing stuff if you come back in your body.
Yeah, I feel like that for that awareness of how important it is to be aware of even just your physical body, not even having to dip into the labels of emotions sometimes. So I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been experimenting here and there in clinics and stuff where I'll have people do the practice of describe the sensations in your body without attaching the emotion to it, because I feel like sometimes there's judgment around the emotions. Do you have an idea of what it is about just experiencing those sensations that sometimes it can release those? Like I keep telling people this, and then I know because I've done it, so I know it works, but I'm like, how does that work? I mean, do you have an answer to that, or are you where I'm at?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it's just about releasing the energy by honoring it, by witnessing it or experiencing it, right? So as soon as you open that door to processing something and allowing the body to process it because you recognize something is there, I think sometimes you're right. There is judgment on emotions because of what we were taught when we were kids, like sit there and shut up, stop, you cry, I'll give you more. Like there's all sorts of holes. I think when we're a kid, our adults in our life are there to put holes in us, like with the hole punch. That's what they're there to do, because we were born, we're perfect, we're very godlike, we're perfection where we're born, and the human experience isn't about experiencing perfection, it's about healing the holes. Right? So if throughout our life we don't actually address those holes, we're going to come back and do it again, maybe, or whatever your belief system is, or we're going to feel like there's unfinished business somewhere, or we're going to get stuck in a hole. And I think labels can be way more powerful because they're words, right? Versus if you just allow the experience. And I think it's beautiful what you're doing to say, like, no, stop, don't go label that, just feel it, just experience it, because that will move things. That will totally, because our mind is so powerful and words are so powerful that we can re-traumatize if we experience a word. And then what have we done? We've put ourselves backwards in that sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you circumventing that process by saying, no, 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 stop, wait, no. That gives them permission to process without having to get stuck in that re-traumatization possibly, or stuck in the judgment, or whatever the case may be. So
yeah, I feel like that for that awareness of how important it is to be aware of even just your physical body, not even having to dip into the labels of emotions sometimes. So I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been experimenting here and there in clinics and stuff where I'll have people do the practice of describe the sensations in your body without attaching the emotion to it, because I feel like sometimes there's judgment around the emotions. Do you have an idea of what it is about just experiencing those sensations that sometimes it can release those? Like I keep telling people this, and then I know because I've done it, so I know it works, but I'm like, how does that work? I mean, do you have an answer to that, or are you where I'm at?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it's just about releasing the energy by honoring it, by witnessing it or experiencing it, right? So as soon as you open that door to processing something and allowing the body to process it because you recognize something is there, I think sometimes you're right. There is judgment on emotions because of what we were taught when we were kids, like sit there and shut up, stop, you cry, I'll give you more. Like there's all sorts of holes. I think when we're a kid, our adults in our life are there to put holes in us, like with the hole punch. That's what they're there to do, because we were born, we're perfect, we're very godlike, we're perfection when we're born, and the human experience isn't about experiencing perfection, it's about healing the holes. Right? So if throughout our life we don't actually address those holes, we're going to come back and do it again maybe, or whatever your belief system is, or we're going to feel like there's unfinished business somewhere, or we're going to get stuck in a hole. And I think labels can be way more powerful because they're words, right? Versus if you just allow the experience. And I think it's beautiful what you're doing to say, like, no, stop, don't go label that, just feel it, just experience it, because that will move things. That will totally, because our mind is so powerful and words are so powerful that we can re-traumatize if we experience a word. And then what have we done? We've put ourselves backwards in that sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you circumventing that process by saying, no, stop, wait, no. That gives them permission to process without having to get stuck in that re-traumatization possibly, or stuck in the judgment, or whatever the case may be.
So have you had that experience where you either have clients that have done it, or that it is that simple? It's funny because
all my tools are that simple.
And then I teach it, and then I'm like, how could it be that simple that you just had to move your body in a certain way, and then all of a sudden, like, it's gone. And I'm like, I know, I teach it. I don't know why it's still shocking to me still.
No, it's fantastic. Like I talked about a Pixar brain, all the tools that I have in my toolbox for emotional and energetic transformation, they can be done. Well, I will say all. There's one that is a lifetime experience, which is dealing with your little kid inside of you. That's a lifetime experience. But in terms of identifying and shifting energy, like we can do one on here just to show you how quick it is. Raise your hand. Does anybody here feel drained by experiences or by people? Or does anybody probably, I get the feeling we need to do this unplugging thing. So unplugging is like, literally the Pixar brain description comes up. You have to be open-minded to the fact that stuff can change like this, and you have to kind of feel like your life is sucked out of you sometimes, right? After you deal with a particular person, or after you deal with a situation, you just feel more tired. Does anybody feel like that ever? So, you have a question, Heidi?
Let me
Yeah.
unmute. Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
a teenage son who constantly has that exact issue that you're explaining. He's very intuitive. It's not something I was taught. My father was intuitive. It's something that's really generationally passed down. So it's not something that I ever blocked or said was wrong. But for example, whenever he goes with my mom, with me and my mom, she zaps all his energy. Like he just can't handle it. She's a narcissist and he's an empath and he's done. Like he can only handle so much of her.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, there's lots of blocking techniques that you can go research. A great person for him to go learn about or read a book is Dr. Christiane Northrup's Dodging Energy Vampires. But yeah, to get back to your question, Amber, 90% of my tools are that, like 15 seconds, let's change the energy just by using words and having energy follow the directions of the words. So it is as simple as that, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And there's lots of systems that have been created to make things more complicated in order to sell things, because you got to sell something that's longer than 15 seconds, right? So it's like you could write most of the books in 20 pages, but you have to tell all the stories in order to sell the book. And so it's something that I go back and forth with, because the stories are a lot of fun, but the actual tools, they only work if you use them. So you got to keep doing it sometimes. I think our energy is like a rescue dog. Once you recognize that your energy is affected by your environment and by other people, you have to retrain it to be healthy. And so a lot of times we learn at a very young age that if we went over and paid attention to a situation that our parents were struggling in or stressed out in, and they were like, oh, thanks so much, you made me smile, like, oh, you brightened my day for that one moment, we assume that whatever we did energetically was rewarded then. And so it gets creating this codependent energetic scenario where we over give, or we allow the drain to happen, or we carry the empathy of the world and the weight of the world, even though like nothing changed for that person when we photocopied their shit. Like we learn all this stuff at a very young age. So when you imagine your energy system as a rescue dog that needs retraining, you never get mad at a rescue dog for pooping and peeing in the house. You just start to pay attention. Oh, he's gonna poop and pee in the house, I better get him outside. So the same kind of conscientiousness has to take place when you're dealing with retraining your energy to have new behaviors. So this unplugging thing is, the visual is actually more fun than the words. So is anybody visual here? Can you like follow me if I take you through a visualization?
I think most of the people here I've actually worked with, and that's a lot of what we do. So it'll be perfect.
Oh, cool. All right. So the visualization is pretty quick and easy. And I'm going to preface this that you may or may not notice a difference, because sometimes tools need to be stacked to notice a difference. So even if you don't notice the difference, just if intuitively it feels good for you to do this, then intuitively do this. Okay. So everybody is a vacuum cleaner with the retractable cords. Everybody knows what that vacuum cleaner looks like. You plug it into the wall and it's got a retractable cord and it zings back to the vacuum cleaner. So every human being, everybody is a vacuum cleaner with a retractable cord. If you feel drained, it's because of one of two things, or both things. We've got our cords plugged into other people and they're sucking the life out of our vacuum cleaner, our generator, or they've got plugs plugged into us and they're sucking the life out of us. And when we're plugged in sideways, we feel and know too much about what's going on in those other people's worlds, because there's a connection there. All of our plugs should be connected up and down, up and down. So whatever your belief system, for me, it's God and the earth. But, you know, if it's the positive aspects of the universe, if it's source, if it's your angels, like whatever, it's got to be up, a source that's bigger than you and positive. And don't say the universe, because there's good and bad in the universe. Okay. You don't want to give a default that you get connected to the wrong thing. Okay. You just be specific, because words and energy follow each other. So the math is, we're going to pull the outlet and the plug from others. Okay. We're going to bring the outlet and plug back to us. And we're going to take out the outlets and plugs that are plugged into us, and they're going to go back to their source. And we're going to pull all the energy that's ours back where it should be. And then we're going to make those plugs plug on in, up and down. So connected. 18-wheeler, God and the earth, or whatever you want to connect to. Okay. Positive and the earth, because you want to be grounded at the end of this. Okay. So some people are like, oh, I'm taking out all these freaking plugs. And you can hear them go back. It's like, sing, sing. And one lady even said, oh, it's like this stove plug, and it's going to slap them on the ass when they get it back. You know, it's like, okay, whatever works for you. So you're going to unplug anyone and anything, because things can be plugged into you too. Unplug anyone and anything and pull that outlet out with it, and it's going to return back to source. And you're going to unplug you, all your cords and outlets, and they're going to return back to you. And then you're going to pull all the energy that is yours back to you. And then you're going to ensure you're connected, again, whatever your belief system is, and the earth. And you might even want to stand in a shower of light and clean off anything that shouldn't be there, that, you know, got dusty while it was connected to something else. Okay. And most people will feel slightly calmer, slightly lighter, potentially, or just a shift of differences than what they felt before. And some people notice nothing, and that's okay. Does anybody notice a difference? Okay. Different in a good way? Okay. If there's any difference that makes you feel like, ew, this feels weird, I need to know. Okay, because that can be a need for another tool. But everybody's feeling more centered or neutral or calmer than they were before. I hope so. Okay. So
yeah, I was looking, I don't see any hands, so I think we're good.
Okay. So that's a visual that you can be doing regularly. And if there is the silly narcissistic person in your life or whatever, they may arrive with a text message on your phone like immediately after you unplug, because they're going to be like a hornet going, excuse me, I lost my energy supply, something's changed, I don't know what, like what, I need it back. You'll hear this little hornet or horsefly, and you'll be like, no, unplug, go away, get your own sandwich. All right, because that's retraining. That connected sideways isn't healthy, connected up and down is healthy.
Yeah, that's a really good visual, because I was just talking about I think that is a theme for people a lot right now, because I feel like the time and space everyone's in right now, everyone's stuff is being highlighted, their wounds are being highlighted, you know, everything is coming to the surface. I feel like it's happening really fast for people, and this stuff feels really big. And I think that everyone can recognize somebody that they have in their life that is draining when they're around. I think, especially if you're even watching a podcast like this, you're somewhere in the realm of becoming aware of something like this, and it's brought you here. And I feel like everyone can identify at least one person when they're around. And it doesn't even, also for me, it doesn't have to be somebody that is necessarily a narcissist, right?
Oh, no, totally
it can
not.
be anybody that you come into contact with at the grocery store. I feel like Absolutely. It's an interesting thing for me in the practice that I started, well, I feel like when I went through my theta training, they teach you this, but I wasn't even in a place where I could hear most of it. It was all kind of like, I don't know what they're talking about. There's some woo woo shit happening in here. Like, now I understand it. And then dealing, interacting with clients, interacting with all the things that I get interacted with, that practice of, if I forget to do it right after that client, I have to remember to at least make a practice out of it in the evening, where I unplug, cut cords, clear, wash off, whatever it looks like, whatever your mind wants to visualize doing, right? And if you make it an every evening practice, you can actually feel when there is something that is draining from you.
Right. Good point about the narcissist piece. They're not the only people that drain. It's not about somebody being good or bad that can be draining. It can just be about their circumstance that they're in, that they're needing a lifeboat, right? It doesn't have to be a narcissist. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I didn't want to leave that as just, oh, that's the only one that's ever going to drain you. Because it can be that they just need a lifeboat, because their life is in a stir, and they could be not on that narcissistic scale. So thank you for bringing that up. And making it a regular practice is really important, whether you're in the holistic industry or not. It's the training of the rescue dog, right? So thank you for allowing me to do that with everybody today. That's fun.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll use that one for sure. Because I feel like we do a grounding practice when we do the meditation before we work. We do connect. But I don't actually have that practice of, if there's anything, let's disconnect it. So I'm going to work that in now. I forget about that.
And if you think about a horse wanting to deal with somebody who's congruent and somebody who's authentic, if you've got a whole bunch of other people's energy connected to yours, that horse now is like, okay, who are you today? Like, I've gone to the barn too quickly and not done my 5 minutes of zippity doo dah. And I've had the youngest horse in the whole barn, like, oh, Heather's arrived. And it's just like freaking out, like kicking and jumping. And it's not a joyful thing. It's just like, whoa, I can't handle you. So I just walk to the end of the acreage and I lay on the earth. I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta get rid of this shit. Like, oh my God. So yeah, and I'd stand up here, I would do the gopher, and he'd start again. And oh, I'm not done. All right, you gotta just not be around any of them until I'm fixed. And I do my tools, and I sometimes do qigong before I go to there's so many ways to get yourself okay before you arrive in somebody who's sensitive, like a horse or a dog. We're not all perfect. We're never gonna be like Zen 100% of the day. Like, life happens, phone call happens, whatever it is. But if you can be conscious of it before you actually arrive in your horse's presence, then they're judging you on you that day, not judging you on who you've come across that day, what you're carrying with you. So
yeah, definitely. What are some of your favorite self-care stuff, or stuff that you kind of keep in your toolbox specifically for you, knowing like that day that you showed up and you're like, oh, I know that I've brought every single client I've had today with me. And the horses are like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite stuff that you do?
Like, before I got on this call, actually, one of the dogs that I've dog sat for probably 8 years has been failing in the last 2 weeks or so. And I got the text message that, nope, tomorrow's the day if you want to come see him or come see her. And I'm like, well, I'm going on a call and I gotta get my poop together. So I use Rescue Remedy, and I knew I would bring that up because this is such a powerful tool. If you don't know Rescue Remedy, have it in your toolbox. It helps with grief, trauma, and fright. It helps with impatience. It helps with grounding. It helps with fear of losing control. And it helps with terror. So I use it with the animals. I use it with myself. It's because it's grounding, it forces you into that body sensation place. So that's one of my tools. The other one is just saying where that I need to rest. So if I've always been a nighthawk, and if I don't see a client until 11 o'clock in the morning, so I just go with my body rhythms. I don't try and fight them. In the summertime, I had no problem getting up to go muck a stall at 7 o'clock in the morning. But if there's no stall mucking involved, it seems like I'm okay staying in my bed and being flat. I've had a couple burnouts in my corporate world when I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, and so adrenal support is good. I do supplements. You know, I don't live to take supplements. They're part of what I do. Eating organic, real food is important to me because I figure I want my body to be around for a long time, and I want to. It's more expensive to maintain it if it's sick than if it's well. So I feed it good fuel. The tools that I've got in my toolbox are tools that I use. So if I feel the need to do some acupuncture, I do acupuncture on myself. If I feel the need to, I've gotten in the practice of doing qigong every day. That's been kind of neat to stay centered and balanced. And there's so many different modalities like that. If yoga resonated with somebody, then I'm more, I can do it in 7 minutes. I'm going to do it in 7 minutes. That's kind of where I'm at. I can do something else, or I can just be. Nature is huge. If I can get out in the woods every day or go to the barn, I do go to the barn every day if I can, unless there's weather. So yeah, animals, nature, water, good food, paying attention to, oh, I should be doing that. Like that intuition thing is a huge self-care tool.
I was literally just going to say, I wanted to dive into that piece a little bit for sure before we get off. I had put a poll in my private group. I think it was like yesterday or the day before. I don't even know why. It was that inspired action, right? It was like, oh, poll. And I was like, what is the poll? It's like, and it was about which one of your senses do you feel like is, you know, lit up the most when you're around your horse? And so many people said intuition, because obviously I use that as one of the senses. And so that piece is interesting. And so I think people get a little bit, they get a little bit confused about intuition maybe, or how do I know it's, you know, not my, you know, brain or my this, or, you know, how do I trust it? So I know that this is like probably a completely different call that we can go into, because it's like where your passion kind of lies. But if you were to try to support somebody in, let's say, just growing their intuition, you know, like I just want to, you know, I want to have something that helps me get more in touch with it and more clear with it, you know, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I've done 76 podcasts, so I'm more of an expert because I've listened to a lot of people, as well as lived a bumpy road in my life sometimes when I wasn't listening. And when I was listening more to other people, that's when the drama happened. So if you are in a drama-filled environment, you are probably not listening to your intuition.
Oh, that's good.
And when you, like, it can come so many different ways. If it's inspired to do something, because there's doers, there's people who hear stuff, there's people who need to have signs. I asked for goosebumps when I started my practice because I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't ask for goosebumps specifically. I'm just like, make it known when I get something important, like that I don't miss it. And I'll like, oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps. And I don't know how many times I do that in the course of an appointment with somebody, because the goosebumps showed up and you can't make that stuff happen.
Right.
So being okay, asking for signs, asking for, and paying attention. Your biggest tool with intuition is paying attention. So if paying attention is pausing more often, if paying attention is paying attention to, okay, every time I go outside, there's a crow crowing at me. I need to ask that crow what he's trying to tell me. Right. I need to stop and ask what that crow's trying to tell me. And then not discounting. I did a podcast with Jim Masterson, and what a sweet man.
Yeah, I met him here. He was amazing.
He is sweet. He's the real deal. And the name of his podcast is Doubt the Doubt, because he's like, I'm not really sure that I'm like intuitive, because outside of working with horses, I don't know that I listen to it, but his title is podcast, because if it was said once, it was said 14 times in his podcast, Doubt the Doubt. And so if you just go with that first feeling and you doubt your brain, that's making you doubt what you know. Or what you heard, or what you feel, or what you see, or what your clue is in that dream, or what that crow's trying to tell you. Because the little kid listened to their intuition, and it's the adulting, it's all those holes that create the doubt, really. And so if you can figure out how yours comes by test driving the different ways that it can come, and asking for guidance, prayer or meditation, like automatic writing. If you are a writer, you can ask for your messages to come when you write and just get out of the way. It's stopping long enough to get out of the way. It's doubting the doubt. Like it's being okay. Everybody's on this kick of calling it woo, and I'm like, it's so not woo. It's how you were created. It's a survival instinct. It is something to be revered because it's coming from a very reverent place. And I'm not dissing anybody who calls it woo, but it's just, I'm going to just shine a light on it that it is a gift. And any of these experiences are gifts, and you will hear people say like, oh my God, this miraculous thing happened, or I couldn't believe that, oh my gosh, I got this gift in the mail because somebody intuitively sent me X in the mail, or all of the intuition in when you get to the other side of it, it always feels good.
Yeah.
So even if it's a warning sign, when you listen to that warning sign, it feels good. Doubt creates drama. Doubt creates like mental activity. Doubt is never good. Like the not listening to your intuition is never good. So if you can follow like my little intuition of, I need to go learn about horses, brought more friggin' joy into my life. I've never felt joy, whether it's the size of the horse's heart or if it's like that whole like, I don't know what, the magical unicorn thing of a horse. Like I'm 51 and I've never felt this much joy being around horses. I mean, mucking stalls, like not even doing anything with the horse, but just going being on the land where there's a bunch of horses. It's like, oh my God, like I'm just like grinning from freaking ear to ear. Just to have the privilege to hang out with an animal that, I mean, I thought dogs were the cat's ass, and don't get me wrong, they are, but but a horse is a dog on steroids, I have to say. Holy smokes.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question about
yeah, definitely. Because I restarted this private group specifically because I've been a horse trainer for so long, and my old group, I just kept saying every time I go in there, I feel like I'm trying to reinvent myself or re-explain what I'm doing that's different than what I was doing. And I got that inspiration and it was that guidance of archive that group and started a new one. And I was like, there's like 600 people in that group. Like, I must be imagining that. There's no way. That's ridiculous. Why would I do that? And then I did it and restarted this new group that's really aligned with all of this. People are ready to hear it and it just feels so much better, right? So there's that inspiration where as soon as I did it and the people started adding, there you go. Then I was like, oh shit, okay, that just follow the guidance and surrender. And even if it doesn't, you don't see what it's on the other side of it, it's like, just do it anyways.
Yeah.
And you'll be rewarded for that by that sensation of this feels so much better. And I can just talk freely and say what's happening in my experience as I go, whether it's big lessons or, you know, stuff coming in, you know, in my sessions or whatever it may be. And we had set up a day that was called Woo Woo Wednesday. And it was interesting because I said, what is woo to you? Because I feel like I don't define, I just, what is, right? Like, no, this is just part of it. And somebody described it as wisdom observed openly.
Lovely.
I was like, that right there is everything. I was like, I will continue to call it well, just because you described it that way.
That's lovely. Yeah, totally.
That's what it is.
Totally.
Yeah. And I feel like that's that piece of when you hear that voice, that's my favorite thing out of this whole conversation is the doubt. My doubt came up when I was like, what do you mean archive my group that I've had since 2010, you know? And by doubting that doubt that came up first, my survival brain went, no, your ego says, keep all these people, all the people that are liking your stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but it didn't feel good. It was just this misalignment, right? So it is for having that disciplined practice of getting quiet for long enough for those inspirations to come through, right? It's like that the discipline of I am important enough, my life, my quality of my life is important enough for me to say I can set aside 5 minutes 5 minutes out of all of the minutes of the entire day to just get aware of what's going on in my body and wait for those messages to pop in however they want to, right? Like totally.
And some people it's just in the waking up. So not being in a rush to wake up. That veil is very thin and stuff will happen. So I have like a notepad there so that you can, oh yeah, I got to remember that I had that intuition too. Yeah, I love your definition of woo. Their definition of woo is beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. After that, I was like, oh, I'm totally okay with using it now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so good. I love sharing that. Yeah, and I always give her credit because I was like, that wasn't mine, but I'm totally using that everywhere. And she's like, bye.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, so yeah, this has been so much fun. And I feel like that piece for you about having the horses just recently come in, somebody also described them to me as like they are used for transportation, right? Like we look at them as transportation. We get on, they get us from this place to another. But the higher level description of why they're so magical is because they have the ability to transport us to different dimensions, to different consciousnesses when we're around them. Like biologically, I feel like they're wired to heal each other and help each other re-regulate in their herd. And so us just being able to be aware enough to be around them, then they can kind of step in and work their own particular brand of magic on us. So I'm so excited for you that you're around horses now.
Yeah, me too. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally. So if anyone wants to work with you, that like they want a session with you, do you do remote stuff? Like what do you do for
Absolutely.
people
Yeah,
near
it's
you?
all my work since COVID, the blessing has been all my work is over the phone, or I find I see better when I don't see you. In a sense, less distracted. My squirrely brain doesn't get distracted, so it's all over the phone, or a messenger audio kind of situation. And most people will they can either Facebook message me or they can connect with my Facebook group of healingvitality.ca on Facebook, or my website's healingvitality.ca. They can connect through that, and it's a unique process, but it's cool because we look at how you're doing physically, emotionally, and energetically, and tools come up, they get discussed, and you end up with your own personalized homework sheet to do. Sometimes it's sometimes we get a third of the way through the typical health assessment because you needed all this information that isn't in the physical world, or sometimes we get through and we deal with the physical side. So a lot of times people have to, well, not a lot of times. Sometimes it's totally about the energetic side why they're coming, and sometimes they've got to build up their physical strength before they can address their emotional and energetic side. So yeah.
Perfect. And then you have your podcast, and what is that
Oh
called?
yeah, the podcast is so fun. It's seers, beers, knowers, and doers. So it's a mouthful. I looked up and said, really? That's going to be my podcast name? Because that's catchy, really? But every day, like it took me a year, and I actually published that in the podcast because it dawned on me once, because I'd always ask in my morning, like thank yous, my gratitudes, and I'd say before seeing any clients, every morning I'd be driving to work going, help me see what I need to see, know what I need to know, do what I need to do, and be what I need to be in some order. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's my podcast name. Like, oh, the math is the same. Oh, right, perfect. So yeah, seers, beers, knowers, and doers. And 90% of them are just interviewing people. There's quite a few horse people on there, because in that last year and a half, I've been like, oh, horse person, you're intuitive, you need to come with me. Oh, horse person, you need to come with me. So yeah, I imagine Amber's going to be a guest on my podcast in the near future. We'll do tit for tat. So yeah, they're about a half hour long typically. And yeah, it's just a great way to spread information about intuition and getting people inspired to listen to their own. So thank you.
Yeah, I feel like that's what it's all about. It's just holding space for people to like strip those layers away enough for them to be able to get the answers themselves and not need to feel like they always have to reach for the answers from someone else. I feel like the deeper you get in, you do have to have those support systems where you're like, I need something, I'm stuck, right, to keep going. But for the most part, from day-to-day stuff, that practice of ask yourself first, I think that's so powerful for people to know that they can do that. So I love what you're doing. It's so good. And is there anything else that you came up that you wanted to be able to say so that you can feel complete before we finish?
Yeah. I mean, listening to your environment, like your horses, like I don't know, do people talk to their horses in this group? I hope so. Do you listen when they talk back?
Definitely do. I think we just started integrating this practice of doing a grounding meditation, checking in with your own body. And then I have them do 2 laps around the arena and ask their horse if there's anything that they need to share with them or what they want to do. That's just a recent thing that I'm like, we really need to start communicating with our horses more, because
yeah, because they're so wise if you listen to what they say back. And you have to listen to your intuition to trust what they're saying. You may or may not like what they say, and that's okay. Yeah, that would be what I would, since I'm talking to some horse people here, I would say tune into those wise beings that you get to hang out with every day. Because yeah, there's lots of healing that can happen, and lots of shared journey that can happen. You can be just as much a part of their healing as they can be for you. So
yeah, absolutely. I always tell
they might be telling you like, I look stoked, but I got shit.
I have a mare like that. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And then I was like, Jim was here and they were doing one of their certifications, and he used her as his demo horse because she's just got some stuff going on that's starting to come to the surface. And that I'm sat off to the side, and I'm constantly teaching people that your horses are a real reflection of, stuff for you. Your souls are together for a purpose, and there are contracts, there are things that have happened beyond this to bring you together. And so I'm sitting on the fence and I'm watching her get worked on, and I'm listening to him describe her, and everybody knows her here, and she's just a really good horse. Like she's And I always described her as, yeah, she just she wears it, she's sensitive, she moves if she needs to, she doesn't stuff it. And that's how I've described her this whole time. And I'm sitting on the fence and I'm watching her, and he's like, yeah, she's got a lot of stuff, but she's fine. And he'd work on her, she's fine. And then he'd walk away and she was like, I'm fine. And I was like, oh shit. It's like there's that level of the releases that she gives herself and the awareness. And then there's that level of like, I was like, that's me. And an hour and 20 minutes into this demo, she finally yawns, but he's got to be like 14 feet away from her, and then she yawns and I'm like, oh, now it's time for me to connect with that piece. And see that piece of it is like, they have so much information for you. And once you're ready to see it, then it's like, okay, here you go. Can't ignore it now. Look, I'm lame. Look, you're lame. Look, everyone's falling apart. Are you going to pay attention to it now? And so I think, listening to them and tapping into the messages, whether it's a physical thing or an intuitive thing going on, is such a powerful gift that the people that have horses get to have.
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful partnership. It can go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much. I'll put all of those links for people to find you in the show notes. And then, if you're in the private group now, so, if there's people that want to reach out, feel free to give them everything that you have from your toolbox and your knowledge, as much as you want in there. It's for everyone. It's a community. So it's not just about my stuff. I want it to feel like everyone can share. So feel free to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. So you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. It's been lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Bye.